Conquest of Syria. When Abu Bakr was in his deathbed, the Muslims had defeated the Romans on the Syrian frontier. After that, Khalid bin Walid annexed Damascus, Ardan, and Hims one after another to the Empire of Islam. At the fall of these three important cities, the Roman Emperor Heraclius became furious and sent a vast army against the Muslims. The Muslim army rallied at Yarmouk under the leadership of Abu Ubaidah. They first wanted to avoid war, but it was thrusted upon them by the Romans. In the Battle of Yarmouk, which took place in July 634 AD, the Romans were defeated, and all the Syrian towns surrendered one by one. When the Emperor Heraclius heard of this discomfiture, he left for Constantinople. The Battle of Yarmouk was a turning point in the history of Syria. In this battle, the power of the Romans was curbed and crushed. Some of the people joined the faith of Islam, but those who refused to join were asked to pay jizya. Peace was concluded with those who neither embraced Islam nor paid any jizya on condition that, if necessary, they would fight for the Muslims. Capitulation of Jerusalem. After the fall of Yarmouk, the Muslims laid siege to Jerusalem. The people of Jerusalem offered to capitulate on condition that the Khalifa should come in person and sign the treaty. Umar, in consultation with the prominent members, responded to their request. The treaty was drawn and signed by the Khalifa. The treaty gave the inhabitants full protection of life, of property, of churches, and of crosses. Their churches shall not be used as dwelling houses, nor shall they be dismantled, nor shall their compounds be in any way damaged. Islam will not be forced on them, nor shall they be in any way molested. The people of Jerusalem shall pay the jizya as the people of other towns. They must turn out the Greeks, but whoever of the Greeks leave the town, his life and property shall be protected till he should reach a place of safety, and whoever should wish to go away with the Greeks, their life and property, churches and crosses, shall be protected. The terms of the treaty will be observed even by the next generation. Conquest of Jazira. In 17a TA/638 AD, the Roman emperor made another attempt to regain Syria at the instigation of the people of Jazira. The Arabs did not want territorial extension, but they were fighting for the protection of Arabia. When this object was achieved, they stopped fighting. But the enemies would not let them rest. The people of Jazira talked the field and opened the gates of war to the invaders. The Muslim force under the leadership of Abu Ubaidah fell upon the enemies, and the enemies were once more routed. Thus the whole of Syria was conquered by the Muslims. Khalid bin Walid. It would not be out of place to dwell upon important matters regarding the services of Khalid bin Walid and his subsequent removal from the command. Bold, fierce, dashing, and courageous Khalid occupies a unique position in the history of heroism. During the Battle of Uhud, he fought on the side of the Quraysh and defeated the Muslims for the first time. On becoming Muslim, Khalid devoted his whole life to the cause of Islam. Ho saved the Muslim army in the Battle Mu'tah from the impending disaster and brought glory to Islam. It was under his leadership that the Muslims were able to restore peace in the peninsula by suppressing the false prophets. The glory of the conquests of Iraq and Syria was also due to Khalid bin Walid. For bravery and courage, he is known in the history of Islam as the Sword of Allah. The man who has done so much for Islam was removed from the command in 17 AH by Umar I. It is said that Khalid gave an award of 10,000 dinars to a poet. Umar disliked this extravagance and asked for an explanation, which was refused by Khalid. Khalid had given the money out of his own purse. There were some other reasons for his removal. Khalid had been very severe on the battlefields against the enemies. Umar did not like this and he found in Abu Ubaidah a man of mild disposition. Regarding the removal of Khalid from power, W. Muir says, he, Umar, had deposed Khalid from his government, not because of tyranny or fraud, but because he deemed it needful to remove stumbling block out of the way of the people, who were tempted to put their trust in an arm of flesh instead of looking alone to the giver of all victory. However, the removal of Khalid bin Walid shows that every Muslim, whatever rank he occupies, is liable to answer for his own conduct. In the same year of the Hijrah, northern Arabia and Syria were visited by a severe famine and pestilence in which many of the best and prominent men fell victim to epidemic. Umar personally came to Syria for the relief of the distressed people. He worked like a common laborer during this time, and on many occasions he was seen carrying loads of flour on his shoulders for the famine-stricken people. Conquest of Egypt. Towards the close of 18A, H./639 AD, Amr bin Az, with the permission of the Khalifa, set out from Palestine for Egypt. The causes of the conquest of Egypt are not far to seek. The strategic position of Egypt, the richness of its grain-producing soil, and the enmity of the Roman emperor led the Caliphate to turn his attention to the conquest of Egypt. The Byzantines had been living in Egypt since their expulsion from Syria and Palestine. It was not safe for the Muslims at any moment. Its capital, Alexandria, was the base of the Byzantine navy and the door to the rest of the North African corridor. The Arabs were not free from financial embarrassment. They had to depend on the mercy of others for the solution of their economic problem. Egypt is a rich country due to the flow of the rival Nile over its surface. The river Nile brings plentiful supply of water every year and makes the soil of Egypt fertile. This is why Egypt is called the gift of the Nile. So the Muslims, in order to improve their lots and to weaken the economic position of the Byzantines, felt it necessary to conquer it, and the behavior of the Roman emperor hastened the work. The Roman ruler instigated the people of Jazira against the Muslims and thought of attacking Syria through Egypt. For these reasons, the Khalifa gave permission to Amr bin Az to proceed to Egypt. Amr entered Egypt with 4,000 men by the route of Wadi al-Arish. After attacking some small towns, he laid siege to Fustat. The siege lasted for 7 months, after which the fort came under the possession of the Muslims. At the fall of Fustat, the Caesar became furious and sent a vast army to Alexandria. After a hot contest, Alexandria was conquered by the Muslims. In 20 AH./640 AD, the whole of Egypt came under the sway of the Muslims. After the conquest of Egypt, Amr took measures to improve the condition of the subjects. Agriculture was patronized and taxation was regulated on a fixed and moderate scale. Trade was encouraged and the Egyptian Christians were treated with kindness. The Egyptians had never enjoyed such a period of peace and prosperity before. It is said that the famous library of Alexandria was burnt to ashes at the instance of Umar. The two famous historians, Gibbon and Gior, are of opinion that it was burnt long before the Muslim conquest of the town. Muir says it is a later invention. Results of the Persian and Roman conquests. The conquest of Persia and Rome had far-reaching consequences in the whole history of Islam. The success of the Muslims over the Persians was a success of the Semites over the Aryans. The powers of the two mighty nations were totally crushed, while those of the Muslims began to increase. The conquests of the Roman Empire brought the Muslims in touch with the Mediterranean Sea. They now felt the necessity of building up their navy. Hence it can be said that the Roman conquest was primarily responsible for the creation of Muslim naval power. With the conquest of Persia and Rome, the Muslims became the masters of the vast dominions. They were now in possession of the heritage of these two resourceful countries. They became economically self-sufficient, and when they were free from the economic depression, they devoted their time to culture and other affairs. It is also suggested that the unlimited material resources of the two countries served as an encouragement to the Muslims to extend their power up to the Indus. The Muslims had learnt the art of the military technique of the conquered people by coming into contact with them. They adopted it in course of time as their model. The Persians and the Romans had reached the height of glory and power in those days. In the domain of culture and civilization, they remained unrivaled in the history of the world. So after the conquest of these countries, the Muslims came in close touch with the Persian and Hellenistic civilization. It was the result of this cultural contact that the Muslims in later days played so successfully the important role in the intellectual fields in the world. Persian etiquette and social system, Persian manners and customs were all introduced in the Arab society. But the Muslims not only took but also gave many things to the conquered people. They introduced a better form of government in the conquered countries. The peasants who were groaning under the burden of taxation under the Persian king, Chosroes, heaved a sigh of relief under the Muslims. Trade and industry, agriculture and commerce received a great impetus in the hands of the Muslims. The conquests of Persia and Rome were not at all an unmixed blessing to the Arabs. The vicious and luxurious life of the conquered people penetrated into the Arab society. As a result, the simplicity of Arab life was lost and the Muslims became degenerated. All these pernicious habits paved the way for the future downfall of the Muslims. Causes of the Muslim success. The success of the Muslims over the Persians and the Romans was mainly due to their religious zeal and fervor. They fought for their country, Islam with all their means and capacity, and were ready to die for it any moment. To die for Islam was a great privilege to them, as they believed that their death for Islam would be rewarded in the next world. Hence they preferred death in the cause of their country to dishonor at the hands of the enemy, while the enemy had no such idea regarding their future. The Arabs were also imbued and inspired with the thoughts of a new nationalism, which was a great incitement to victory over the enemy. They were united under the banner of Islam to defend their country at the cost of their own life. During this period, Arabia produced a galaxy of brilliant soldiers and generals who possessed extraordinary courage and capacity, foresight, and military skill. It was under the leadership of these generals that the conquests of the Islamic world were possible. Besides these, the military technique of the Muslims was superior to that of the Romans and the Persians, who had no mastery over the cavalry and camelry. The internal decadence of the two mighty empires were greatly responsible for the success of the Muslims. Luxury, corruption, and oppression, religious strife, and military disaster had impaired their vigor and undermined their strength, even before they came into conflict with the Arabs. Moreover, the Greeks fought for their power and prestige, while the Muslims fought for their own existence. Their defeat in the field would mean their complete doom and destruction. Hence they fought to the last for one idea, the idea of existence. These are the causes which account for the success of the Muslims against the enemy.